this heaven?
No. It's Iowa.
Can you see? Can you see it?
What?
Someone is going to give a bad take on a movie during a podcast. It's so poorly thought out. And the take is based on bad evidence and their weird subjective tastes. It's horrible.
When? When is this going to happen?
Soon. Very, very soon. Someone. A man. He's middle-aged and lives in the Twin Cities. His name is...
No. It looks like we won't be working together after all, Ben. I don't hear a red ball.
Rick. It is his destiny.
Please don't run from this discussion of Minority Report on the Pod of Dreams.
Okay, Jad, what's coming? Double homicide, one male, one female. Killer's male, white, 40s. Set up a perimeter and tell them we're en route.
I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks.
Give the man his hat.
The future can be seen.
All we have to run on are the images that they produce.
We see what they see.
There hasn't been a murder in 6 years. There's nothing wrong with the system. It is perfect. I agree.
Murder can be stopped.
Tell me exactly what it is you're looking for.
Flaws. You ever get any false positives?
We are arresting individuals who have broken no law.
But they will.
The fact that you prevented it from happening doesn't change the fact that it was going to happen.
The system can't be wrong.
You say something, Chief?
No. You're in a lot of trouble, John. I have a warrant in my pocket that says murder.
Don't run.
You don't have to chase me.
From 20th Century Fox.
He set me up. He set me up.
And DreamWorks Pictures.
Who's the victim? I've never heard of him, but I'm supposed to kill him in less than 36 hours.
He's coming here to get her.
Tom Cruise.
I need your help. If you contain information, I need to know how to get at it.
In a Steven Spielberg film.
I have to know. I have to find out what happened in my life. You tell me, who was it that set this up?
I don't know.
How about now?
On June 21st, everybody runs.
Valentine!
Minority Report.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. Welcome to the Pod of Dreams. We have a special guest today. Brian Egger joins us. He's from DeepFocusReview.com. Brian, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for asking me on, and I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so just feel free to talk a little bit about what you do, your website, your blogging, your reviews, your work in film.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started writing reviews just kind of casually, maybe like 15 years ago. I started my own website, kind of built it from the ground up. I didn't, buy any templates or anything. I wanted everything to be kind of a specific way where if you go on my site, you can click on an actor. It's kind of like IMDb, where you could click on, Tom Cruise, and it'll show you everything I've reviewed by Tom Cruise. So I started that way and just sort of, like I said, did it very casually. And then over the years, it just got a little bit more serious. I went to school for like art history with a focus on film history for my undergrad. And then I got my master's in film studies, and just gradually started taking over my life. And my reviews became much more serious, and it just became my full-time hobby. And now it's, I don't want to say it's my only career, but it's a major part of my life. And so, I write, a couple of reviews a week. I do probably once a month, I will do an in-depth essay in this series called The Definitives, where I do a lot of scholarly research and sometimes getting into like archives, but just a lot of reading and prep goes into those. And those are kind of my reason that I keep going, because I love writing these in-depth essays, and it's kind of my main output are these longer essays. And then just, kind of in the last 2 years, I guess, I've been, Rotten Tomatoes approved and gotten a little bit more attention. So it's becoming more of like my legitimate, career gradually over time. So.
All right. So a quick question. So you do approximately 2 movie reviews a week. How do you pick which movies you review? Do you think, hey, these are the 2 biggest releases, or do you just you pick whatever sounds interesting to you to watch? How do you decide what you're going to review?
Yeah, it really depends on the week. There are some where I'm like absolutely going to review them no matter what. Maybe a particular director or particular actor that I really love. I will go out of my way to reach out and get a screening for that and review that. And then some, I have a Patreon where people pay at different levels to read exclusive content. Like I do a lot of reviews that are only on Patreon. They also get a chance to vote every week. Most weeks, I should say, 90% of the time. So I'll list 5 or 6 movies that I want to potentially review or could review, and they will just vote and pick what they want to see me write about. So for instance, a couple weeks ago they voted on The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, that Nicolas Cage movie. I wasn't planning on reviewing it, just on my own, but they picked it, so that's what I went and saw and reviewed. So there's kind of a balance, and there's some stuff where a studio might reach out and say, hey, do you want to review this? And I haven't really heard of it, and I'll just be like, yeah, why not? So
that's exciting. So when was the first time that ever happened to you? Like you're saying, here's a movie studio that wants you to review a movie. When did that start happening? After Rotten Tomatoes or before?
Before. Rotten Tomatoes was fairly recent. That was only in the last few months, actually, that I've been approved Rotten Tomatoes.
Do you know what? I'm going to just bombard you with questions, Brian. I apologize, but do you know what the criteria is to get selected? You have to review for a certain amount of time or get enough web traffic? Do you have any idea what their criteria is at all?
I don't know what the exact criteria is. I think it's kind of a mystery with younger critics. And back, I'd say 10 years ago, I applied to be on there, and I will admit that 10 years ago my reviews weren't what they are today. I just wasn't as good as a writer, and I was just a little bit more film bro-y, I think, and maybe just not as professional. And so I've since kind of polished my style and gotten a little bit, more in depth, I guess, and
more reps, sure. Just it's like that 10,000 hours thing. The more you do it, the better you get, for sure.
Right.
So you do have to apply to it, though. It is a thing where you have clients, and then they. Okay.
Yeah, and I think they look at things like how much traffic that you get and how many social media followers that you have. I didn't really have a social media presence 10 years ago.
Sure.
I think they look at output. What kind of movies you're writing about. If you're only writing about every new Marvel movie that comes out, you may not get in. I don't know if that's I don't even know if that's true, but they don't have a list of criteria that you have to meet. You just apply and kind of say what you do, and then you find out if you got in or not.
So it's like the Illuminati. There's just some board up there that.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Mysterious algorithm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had applied, just on a whim, in I think like in August of 2021, and sort of forgot about it. That I did that because I was just like, I'm not gonna get in. I'm just a guy who's in his basement. I'm not affiliated with any major associations or anything like that. I'm just doing this, and then they let me in, so that's great.
Yeah, I mean, how excited were you?
I was pretty excited, actually. It came after like there's this new thing called the Banana Meter as well that just started. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
No, I've not.
It's largely focused on kind of independent people who are maybe creating video reviews on YouTube or just smaller critics that aren't affiliated with a larger publication. And so they're very open about who they're letting in, and maybe I don't know if they have the strictest criteria. to let people in, and that's okay because that's a very like supportive group. So they as soon as they like launched, I was like, oh, I'll try that. Why not? And they let me in. Great. And then like all these other little associations started letting me in all around the same within, I would say, the last like 6 months. And so Rotten Tomatoes was the last one. And so yeah, honestly, I felt like legitimized after so many years of just like doing this, you know, like I said, just kind of on a satellite, you know, in my basement doing this.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was great. It was. I know a lot of people put down Rotten Tomatoes, and I know that there's some downfalls in terms of, you know, review aggregation. And you know, I'm not immune to that either, because I know that people are probably now looking at my star ratings or Rotten Tomatoes review and not reading the 1,000 words that I wrote on a particular movie. But I do think that, you know, it increases traffic, it gets you out there a little bit more, and it might get other publications to, you know, ask you to write for them or whatever. It's just a way to legitimize you within the industry.
No, that's awesome. I would be very, very pumped. I mean, like I said, even going back further since that happened, I mean, if a movie studio was like, or even a small one was like, hey, we're trying to get the word out on this movie, can you write a review? That would have been very exciting. I mean, probably about 10 years ago, I started, it was as a hobby, writing reviews pretty intensely for about 2 years, and then full-time job, family, and then just stopped doing it. But if you'd have told me that I would be a Rotten Tomato critic, I would have been just as thrilled, or that, you know, people are taking it seriously enough that they're sending you screeners. Just that alone sounds exciting. I love to get screeners.
It's cool. It started out with like just smaller studios, you know, like VOD type studios that would reach out. And then recently, you know, a lot of these larger, and we're in Minnesota or near Minnesota, and we're kind of the flyover state. So we're not as like, it's not like the studios are reaching out to people or anything. It's more like there's a PR agency in Minnesota that handles these studios, and there's another one that handles these studios. So if you can get onto those lists, then you're going to be invited to, you know, a screening or something like that. So that's kind of, you know, it's this exclusive club that a lot of people try to get into, I guess. And it feels kind of cool to be in that club for somebody who was not in that club for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just sort of enjoying that, and then realizing that there's all kinds of other hurdles to jump over now. So,
sure.
Yeah.
There's always new challenges. So I've got to ask this question. I'm sure you want your opinions on your movies to vary on Rotten Tomatoes. Like anything else, it's a tool. If used in the right context, it's useful. If used in the wrong context, it's horrible. I'm sure you want your reviews to accurately reflect your opinions, and you want them to truly just, you can know exactly where you stand in a movie. But are you ever tempted now to just do something crazy just to get a bunch of attention? I'm going to just shit on a really beloved movie or praise something terrible just to try to get.
Is that the Armond White, right? Isn't that kind of his MO?
Right. Right. Yeah. If there's 100% rating, you know, right now, am I going to be the one to put a negative review or something on there? Yeah. I will say that I've had trouble. So one thing, when you're welcomed onto Rotten Tomatoes, you have a backlog of reviews, and I've written, you know, a few thousand reviews at this point. You're expected to manually put all those reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh my. Okay.
So this is a process of like me, you know, grabbing a link, you know, looking through a review that I forgot that I wrote from 3 years ago, and trying to find a pull quote, and, you know, putting my rating in and all that. So one thing about the way that I write is I don't write to be quoted. I'm writing kind of a long, you know, essay about a movie, and the critique is very involved, and I don't have a lot of quotes. So I've struggled with that, and I'm just having a hard enough time getting my stuff on there in the way that I write, like getting one sentence that summarizes how I feel. That to answer your question, I haven't even thought about like gaming the system to get more attention. I will say though that one thing that I've noticed, and you know, maybe you've noticed this too, is that when you go on Rotten Tomatoes, certain movies, like, you know, if you look at Doctor Strange probably has like like 400 reviews from 400 different critics because that's a really popular movie.
Sure.
I tend to review a lot of stuff like international and independent movies where it's only like, in some cases, I've seen only like 9 other critics have reviewed a particular movie. So I'm finding that my niche is very like, it's those kind of outsider on the margins movies and people who like those movies that are finding my reviews now due to Rotten Tomatoes. And I can see like referral traffic coming in from Rotten Tomatoes on those movies. One, because I'm now the most recent person who's reviewed these older movies. Sure. And so maybe I'll be the first one that they see when they come to that page of, some obscure French film or something. And then 2, just the sheer number of reviews is so low on those particular movies that I'm going to be one of the few that they see. So that I think is where my niche is. And it's not so much like, does anybody care what I think about the new Doctor Strange movie? Because nobody does. Sure. I don't think my audience does, to be honest.
No, they don't care what the critics have to say. It's going to get a certified fresh rating. It's coming off the assembly line, and people are going to see it in droves. It's going to.
You mentioned it twice now, so I just got to ask: have you seen the new Doctor Strange movie? Did you get an advanced screener for that?
I did. I'm not gonna. I haven't watched it. I haven't watched it yet. My screening is this week, and yeah. So. If I had seen it, I think the embargo's lifted, so I could talk about it, but I just haven't watched it yet.
Got it. Okay, sounds good.
But I am excited about it. I mean, as pretentious as my taste can sometimes be, I have a DVD collection behind me, and it's filled with Marvel movies. Like I enjoy Marvel movies. Yeah.
So that answers maybe kind of answered a question I've had. So let's say you review, City Lights, an old Chaplin movie, and it's got 12 reviews, and you upload your old City Lights review. That'll go on Rotten Tomatoes, and now instead of 12, there'll be 13 reviews, and it'll just get added. So slowly, older movies get added that way. Okay, that's good to know. I've always wondered. All right. See?
Yeah, and it's usually within 2 minutes of me hitting submit, it'll be on there, which is kind of nice. I mean, one of the can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We prefer it. Right. We prefer it. Yeah.
Great. So one of the coolest things I think was recently a studio reached out to me, Trauma Entertainment. You know who they are?
Oh yeah, we reviewed Toxic Avenger.
Oh yeah, that's right.
One of my favorite movies.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So a rep there asked that I review Shakespeare Shitstorm, or I should say hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm, the new Trauma movie, which is totally just fucked up and just it's just insane. And I was the only person on Rotten Tomatoes who reviewed that movie at the time. I'm not sure if that's true at this moment, but like Lloyd Kaufman reached out and like thanked me for reviewing it, and it was just this whole big
trippy
thing.
Oh my gosh, that'd be really fun.
Yeah, it was kind of awesome actually.
So if you give it a thumbs up, it's 100%. Then is that how that works? Okay.
Well, I think there has to be a certain number of reviews. I'm not sure how many. I think it's like maybe 20 or 30 or something like that.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, but there's one review right now and it's positive.
People are going to read it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be trippy. I can only imagine. That'd be really fun. So that
was like my one, brush with anyone who's a celebrity, and it's kind of awesome that it's Lloyd Kaufman of all people.
Yeah, he seems. I mean, I've only seen him interviewed a couple of times, but he seems like a very nice, goofy, friendly guy from whatever I've seen, at least for his public persona.
Yeah, absolutely.
So people can deepfocusreview.com is the website. At Deep Focus Review is your Twitter handle if anybody wants to follow that, and then just our Rotten Tomatoes, they can search your name, right, and kind of pull up all your reviews that way too.
Yeah, I've got a little page on there, and then my Patreon is just Patreon/Deep Focus Review, and then I think that's I've heard that certain patron groups like you maybe get one post a week or one post every 2 weeks or something, and I'm doing like at minimum 3 a week, and voting, and you can, depending on what tier you join at, you can even like request a review or request an essay, and I'll write a review of your choice. So there's a whole like reader's choice element to it.
So if I give you enough money, basically you'll watch and review any movie I want to within
pretty much
some limit. Okay.
Unless I've written about it already. Yeah.
Well, shifting gears to this week's episode, Minority Report. So I reached out to Brian and asked him if he joined the pod, and asked to pick a movie, and he picked Minority Report. So Why this movie? Why did you pick Minority Report?
So this is, I would say, one of my favorite movies. I wouldn't put it on a list of the 100 best movies, but it's one of my favorites. Sure. I don't see movies in the theater usually more than once, and for whatever reason, when this movie came out, it came out in 2002. I mean, I was just at that, I was in college, and I was super into Philip K. Dick. I was super into Spielberg at the time. He had just put out AI the year before. Tom Cruise was hot at the moment. None of the the stigma around him had come out yet. So this was just like this perfect union of all these forces that I really liked. And I saw it in the theater like 4 times, and I was just like, bringing people to come see it because it was such just this breezy, fast-paced, incredibly smart, incredibly imaginative, technically well-made movie that, and I was a big reader of Roger Ebert at the time. He praised it. I think he called it the best movie of 2002. And yeah, so I mean, everything about this movie just clicked for me. It works intellectually. It works just as pure entertainment. The filmmaking, like I wrote an essay on my site, and I mean, most of my essay is just talking about the filmmaking and kind of the genre elements that are going into this, because it's such an inspired genre piece. It's it kind of blends neo-noir and Hitchcockian suspense and a Philip K. Dick philosophy all into this big nice package that for me pays off in pretty much every way.
So as a follow-up, so I've not read the original Philip K. Dick story that's based on. How much does it match? What liberties did Spielberg take, just generally speaking?
Well, I will say, so Scott Frank is the screenwriter, right? He's gone on to do amazing things.
Yeah, he's great.
The Queen's Gambit most recently is probably how people would know him, but yeah, he wrote the screenplay too for this movie.
And so it's not faithful to the short story. The short story is basically just the concept of the pre-crime and what a Minority Report would be. And there's a character named Anderton. It's not this elaborate chase. It's not this anything like this story. I think it's just basically the concept. Philip K. Dick was great at concepts. Like he wasn't so great at characters or like three-dimensional
plot. Sure, right. Didn't care about plot mechanics. No, it was all about the ideas. Sure, I was just curious. I didn't know to what extent Spielberg had molded this to make it a little more Spielbergian, family-friendly entertainment from the concept, but it just sounds like took the raw idea and then put it through, the filmmaking magic machine.
Yeah.
So how recently before this had you seen Minority Report? When was the last time you watched it?
The last time in full was maybe a year ago.
Oh wow, yeah, okay.
And then I've been watching, clips to refresh, but I probably watch this movie once a year.
Oh wow, okay, you really do love it. Okay.
Yeah. I would say that I'm a big Spielberg fan. I wouldn't call myself an apologist, because I don't think there's anything to apologize for. I think he's an outstanding filmmaker, even in all his sentimentality and commercialism and everything that he may have done to the industry. He's an outstanding filmmaker. And this period from like 2001 to 2005, where he's doing science fiction, is just peak Spielberg for me. AI and Minority Report and War of the Worlds, I think, are all fantastic movies. And I think these are movies that enrich themselves upon repeated viewings. Each one of those, I think, are just top tier Spielberg.
Yeah. So I had that very same thought so I've not seen this movie watching when it came out. I was in high school at the time, and then I probably saw it once in college, and then it's been, I'll call it 15 years, give or take.
Sure.
But I was watching the first act, and I was like, oh, this is like prime Spielberg. I mean, he's doing it all. We're getting engaging dialogue, which moves fast. It's entertaining. It's also introducing the themes. We get a character's belief system. Pre-crime is perfect, and then the system weighs down on him, and I'm like, oh, this is all just moving super fast. And we get these themes of determinism, And it reminded me of Jurassic Park in a lot of ways, just because that also you get the characters introduced and their beliefs get tested through a really entertaining.
And he does such a good way of breaking down like the science of it too, because like a movie you could do like if this movie was in lesser hands, it could kind of maybe fall apart. You know, I mean, it has the great idea of pre-crime, but if it's beyond that, it could be some like sci-fi or stars movie that you see that just doesn't really hold together. But he's so good at explaining. Like the first scene when Colin Farrell pops in and he's kind of asking all these questions about the science, which you as the like audience are like, wait, this doesn't make sense, and he's answering all those questions in such a really skillful way that I think it's only Spielberg could do something like that.
And I think Cruise sells it like that whole conversation where he rolls the ball and he catches it. Why'd you catch that? That's such a great performance and just a great explanation of everything. And he so believes in it. And I think that to your point, lesser writing or a lesser actor would have you would have been thinking about the holes in the process and how this is maybe moralistically wrong.
Because there still are holes. Like the idea that it only does murder is like, wait, that doesn't totally add up, right?
I just accepted that. Like murder is the worst metaphysical. I was like, all right, whatever. He only wants to focus on murder for the sake of the movie. It's not convincing, but I can roll with it. You set up the rule in the first act, only murders. Yeah. That's fine.
But they don't hide away from it. In some movies they would just kind of like not explain it. They go right into it. And they have a guy be like, wait, this doesn't make sense, and they have him answer it. Whether or not the answer is acceptable is kind of up to you. But I just love that.
After listening to your Memento episode recently, I kind of, I don't know, maybe just Nolan was in my head, but I was thinking about how this compares to something like Inception, where it's just playing by its own rules. It's establishing its own little bubble, and it exists within that bubble quite perfectly, I think. And if you, try to go outside that bubble, maybe some things fall apart, but within that bubble, everything's so well engineered, and it can't really be broken because they really explain everything.
He does all the good first act set stuff up. I mean, all of it is just really tightly written. I bring something to this movie that I didn't before, and I if you had asked me in my 20s if is such thing as objective film criticism, I would have said yes. I don't anymore. So Eric and I both went to law school.
Okay.
And it doesn't get in the way, but I kept thinking instantly like, okay, yeah, you can't put people away for life for not killing somebody. People get stopped from murdering people now. We don't put him to jail for murder. I'm like, okay, yeah, that doesn't make sense. Have pre-crime, but just don't charge him with attempted murder.
Well, the foundation of our criminal law requires two things: the act and then the thought. And in this movie, you don't need the act to get convicted of a crime, it would fundamentally change criminal law.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so interesting about this, though, is that it's an experiment, and they acknowledge that it's an experiment, and it's this isolated within the city, and they've got judges backing it, and they're all believing in this science of the precogs that yes, these are all things that have been verified and have happened, and they're going to happen, and they believe in that so fundamentally that it's to them whether the act has happened or not is there's no question it's going to happen, which obviously is the whole concept of the movie. But
right. And I love the back and forth with Colin Farrell where he's talking about the premeditation that doesn't happen anymore. He's like, because people figured out if you plan out a murder, they're just going to catch you, so nobody's planning out murders anymore. I love they even took it to that next level, which I wouldn't have even thought of as a audience member. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it. But it's so brilliant that they even went to that far of a extreme to explain that.
Yeah, and I would say the point of how you actually punish people is not super relevant because it's obviously about determinism versus free will. I mean, that's the theme set up in the first act. But I was just thinking, okay, yeah, I would very clearly say you can arrest these people, you can put them in jail, but don't put them in a mind prison, which I have to say is truly horrific. And one of the many strengths of this movie is the incredible world building around everything. It's flushed out and stuff isn't overtly explained. You get it. I mean, you walk into a store and some holograms like, would you like to get shoes, Mr. Lewis? And it's basically micro ads, right? I mean, that's basically the same exact concept. And it's just so flushed out perfectly. And they don't explain how everything works. And the people know about the spiders. They don't explain to us what the spiders are. They show and we see people reacting to them. And they just know like, oh, yeah, the mom freaks out about a kid. The couple that are fighting, they stop fighting. And they're like, all right, we're going to cooler jets while this thing scans our eyes. And it's really tense and exciting, and you can figure it out. And it's not over-explained. It's just it does the show, don't tell, so well. I mean, because every aspect of this looks very convincing and real and fleshed out. So the setting is really, really immaculate. And those Halo things are very scary. Like that sounds like an absolute nightmare, being stuck in a prison of your own thoughts. That was one thing, is I had forgotten about the Halos. It's like, oh yeah, that's awful. They put them on instantly, no trial, you're done.
Yeah. I love that aspect of it. I mean, they go to such length to explain pre-crime, but the rest of the world is full of these amazing little details that, to your point, they don't need to. There's no exposition about why Tom Cruise's cereal box is animated and it looks as though he has to shake it to get it to stop and set it down, but it's not working, and so he keeps trying to hit it, and we know that he doesn't explain, well, this cereal box has to be set down to shut off. We just get that because it's you don't need to explain it. And then he just chucks it and it keeps going. I love that everything that they're to your point, there are all these technologies and they're all supposed to work in a certain way. And yet every one of them is shown to be faulty in some way, or we see the downside of them. Yes, we see the downside of the prison, the mind prison. You're not supposed to, you're not supposed to dream in there. But people are dreaming in there. These sensors are yes, they're designed to advertise to you, but this is also like a huge plot point where now people have to remove their eyes to evade them. You're just seeing the flip side of every one of these, and that's such a Philip K. Dick choice to not only invent all of these amazing things that were hugely influential for like the rest of science fiction cinema of the 21st century, and just our daily lives. Like this movie was like I don't know if you guys have maybe read about this, but there was this, when they were developing this movie, Spielberg kind of got together all these big minds in science and physics and engineering and just kind of had this summit of people who were just throwing out ideas of what things were going to be like over the next 20 years. Sure. And he took all those ideas before any of them were into real like development, and he put them all into this movie. And then what happens over the next 20 years, we see half of this stuff kind of come true, which is really messed up and also kind of amazing.
Well, the one thing, like we had the Xbox Kinect where you move your hand and that's how you select things. You just go like that. And that's from like directly from this movie.
Absolutely. And what's amazing about that is that we've seen, Tony Stark moving things, and Minority Report is smart enough to know that you're going to need a glove to properly register this stuff. And whenever you see this stuff in these holographic screens, you never see anybody wearing a glove. And Minority Report is the only one where somebody's got a glove, and that's the most realistic version of that, because it's not going to register your hands probably as well. So I mean, they've really thought this stuff out, which I appreciate.
I was impressed by how much I thought the future really made sense. The only thing that I thought was a little bit wrong was, like, I don't know that malls are going to be the hub of human activity in 20 years. Maybe they'll come back, but I don't think malls are going to be big. But otherwise,
they also didn't have like handheld devices. I thought that that's a bit of a miss, where like everybody's got a device now,
Yeah, they didn't really address phones at all, did they?
No, they just seem to have like earpieces all the time. Yeah. I don't know. Like everybody had earpieces that they used to talk.
That's true.
And they got
or it was in the car.
Earpieces. Well, because isn't it like Max von Sydow in the conclusion, they bring him like
she hands it to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of the tray with the phone, it's just, here's a little earpiece, put it in. But yeah, it was very, very impressive. I also want to comment, one of my crazy notes is how much of the side characters I'd forgotten about in Love.
Yeah.
The three is, so Gideon, the guy that is like the warden, I guess, of the people in the mine prison. I had to write the actor's name down. Tim Blake Nelson.
Brother Rothau guy.
Yes, the guy from Brother Rothau.
Tim Blake Nelson. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually stole a scene from Cruise. I thought he was far more captivating in that sequence where he was almost doing like this 1930s thing almost. I couldn't put my finger on.
You're not authorized.
Yeah, well, that's great. That was really on point.
Buster Scruggs too, wasn't he in Buster Scruggs? He's in all a bunch of Coen stuff.
You can get your eyes swapped, any junkie on the street or whatever he says. I mean, the whole exchange is great. He's got this weird cadence I really love, and there's tons of religious themes going on in this movie as well. I mean, they call it the temple. That guy's name is Gideon. very, very biblical term. The guy who does the eye replacements, I loved him. He was very, very entertaining. Just a classic Spielberg.
Another Coen guy from Fargo, right?
Yeah.
That guy.
He's a Spielberg alum, Peter Stormare. He was in The Lost World, Jurassic Park, which is not a very good movie, but he's the one eaten by the little compies.
That's
if you
right.
remember that scene?
I've seen that movie probably since the late 90s.
That was actually a scene I didn't care for that, the eye replacement scene. I was
Really?
like, I don't know if we need all this, where he's like grabbing the spoiled milk and the sandwich.
Well, that part was a bit excessive. There's a time where Spielberg was just having fun with stuff. Like
It was
the
nice
eyeball
to-
dropping when he tried to go back in.
roll down the ramp. Yeah, I don't
And the
know
only
if I
thing,
need that.
again, I'm picking a nit here. This didn't really hamper. Why did they not shut off John Anderton's access? I feel like they would lock him out. I'm trying to think if like I was essentially fired if my key card would still work. I was like, okay, that
Well,
was
no,
like
it seemed like he found a back way in because he had to jump over the door. So I don't know
He still needed his eye to get in. He has to use the eye. The eyes roll down.
Oh,
whenever
that's
he's getting
true.
the
Yeah,
eyes
that's
out,
true.
and it's
Yeah.
this bizarre comedic sequence all of a sudden where he's got the fake face and he has to run all the
Yeah.
way down because he drops the eye. It was very bizarre because I'm not used to Tom Cruise doing a lot of physical comedy, so I totally forgot about that sequence. That's really beside the point. But I love the Peter Stormare sequence, how gross it was, and put him on the drugs. His introduction is with the snot coming out. He talks about how many antibiotics he's going to put him on. And it wasn't tense this time, but I remember the first time I watched it thinking he's just going to blind Tom Cruise. He's not going to help him because Tom Cruise had arrested him, back in Baltimore.
I will say the most disgusting thing in that scene, besides the moldy sandwich and green milk, which literally makes me gag every time I see it. It's like I don't gag much from movies, but that makes me gag. The most disgusting part is the nurse who's on the toilet, doesn't wash her hands, and then comes out to perform surgery.
Oh yeah, the whole sequence is very, very gross. But the other one I like is Rufus, the tech guy, who's trying to like, I wanted to kill my boss. He's like, got any pictures I can work with? And then John Andrews shows up. He's like, get out of here. People are ruining this stuff for everybody else. Just a wonderful like tech skis bag, archetype. Those guys were all super entertaining in the scenes they were in. I mean, it was one scene each basically, but it's like, oh man, some really great classic Spielberg side characters. And they all have like Solomon's the guy that does the eye swap. Rufus is that guy, Gideon. We've got a lot of biblical stuff going on too. I'm not gonna write an essay on it, but maybe you have. But there's like clearly deep, if you want to take determinism and God and all that stuff, that's there if you want to pick at it.
I don't pick at the religious stuff, but I have picked at the free will and determinism stuff. I will also add to your list of supporting characters Lois Smith, who's Iris Hinneman, who is so alive in her scenes. She's I think in her 70s at that point, but her delivery of the dialogue, when Anderton goes to see her and she's
the mother of pre-crime. That's right. Do I have that? Okay.
Right.
So.
Lois Smith is such a just lively actress anyway, and I don't know, maybe you guys have seen like Marjorie Prime, or she's been around for
was she in Twister? Was she the mom in Twister when they go to her house?
Yeah.
Is that her?
I think she was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But she, her delivery of that dialogue, I highly recommend you just go back and watch that scene because she's so. It's like she's just stringing sentences together in such a way that just puts her above everyone else, I guess. I don't know what it is about her delivery, but it's just so lively, and she's like one of the most interesting characters, I think, because she knows that there's problems. She knows that the system is corrupt, and she's just isolated herself away behind her, wall of plants and, poisonous plants and vines and whatnot. And, she's just content being that way, which I think is so fascinating for that character.
So you mentioned Spielberg. I wanted to jump back and talk about him a little bit more because there's two sequences in the movie. The one where he's jumping from car to car, trying to escape after he leaves pre-crime, and then the scene in the like auto factory, where he's running away from them and he's climbing on the things that like. Those types of action sequences I just don't see those anymore where they feel like he really feels like he's running away. I know most of it's green screen. There isn't the stuff there, but it doesn't feel the way like Marvel movies feel now where you just kind of shut your brain off because there's no suspense to it. But it must just be because Spielberg's so good at doing those sequences that it's so entertaining. Like I really wanted to watch what happens and how does he get out of this and what's the next step that you just don't see anymore.
I mean, that's a whole like 20-minute sequence where he's in his magnetic car and they take control of his magnetic car, and from that point until the point that he is basically has a car built around him from one car to the other is like a 20-minute sequence, and it's completely just breathless. And he goes from the magnetic car to going into the subway and trying to evade eye scanners, to this alleyway fight sequence where he's being attacked with guys with 6 sticks, which is a very cool idea.
Yeah, but the jetpacks and stuff. Yeah,
and jetpacks. Yeah, and again, Spielberg introduces jetpacks and then tells you everything that can go wrong with them, which is very cool. And then they go into this car factory, which is just an amazing sequence in itself. They've got these weird, guns that are, rotating or whatever. It's like, again, they don't need to explain any of this. It's just all unfolding super fast. And it's even kind of like corny at times. Like Colin Farrell does this move where he punches his fist.
Yep.
And, it's such like an old school like villain move. I mean, he's not even really a villain at that point, but
even where he falls in and they're doing yoga and there's the like sight gag, like nobody's putting that in movies anymore, and it's kind of dumb, but it's also kind of charming in a way. And you're like, oh, okay, and you just move along for the next scene and you're just in it, like it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like half of that movie is these chases or sequences like that, but again, it's just you never see that anymore, and it's so entertaining.
Well, Raiders is almost all practical effects, and it's super exciting. I guess my minority report is I thought the jetpack sequences looked kind of awkward to me. Having not seen it for 15 years, it was a little cumbersome. I was like, it just seemed kind of more goofy than tense from my vantage point. Again, this is a very minor nitpick. I'm not. Everything else up to that was good. I like just the silly. I'm gonna get ready, brass knuckles. We're gonna fight. This is a boxing match.
Although if we're nitpicking, I don't think Tom Cruise has any idea how to fight. Like that was my takeaway from that scene. Is like this guy is not good at fighting. He just looks so awkward, and I guess neither is Colin Farrell. I don't know. It was like the wimpiest fight I've ever seen, but that's my own nitpick.
But I mean, yes, it looks surprisingly good for a movie that's 20 years old at this point. I was worried. I told Eric this last week. I was just worried that some of the CGI would not hold up, and it really did. It looks better than a lot of other CGI from that era. I mean, I always compare it to the Star Wars prequels, and those are more and more difficult to rewatch each time I see them. They look more and more unreal and goofy. And it looked really, really good.
I think part of that has to do with like what Janusz Kaminski was doing with overexposing the film stock and then by doing bleach bypassing, which is like this process where you just don't bleach it and therefore there's silver on the film stock still, and so everything kind of shimmers, and so any kind of like digital effect is going to be sort of rendered almost flat, like with the rest of what you're seeing. Okay. And so you just convincingly buy whatever you're seeing, no matter how maybe cartoony it might look by 2000 standard CGI, which I think this movie holds up better than movies that are coming out today, personally.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And I mean, the same is true of like AI and War of the Worlds, that, Spielberg just knows how to do CGI. But, I mean, to that point, then this effect of bleach bypassing and having kind of the silver on the film stock is also giving it this like futuristic look. It's looking like this is supposed to be a utopia where there's no crime, and of course every utopia is somebody else's dystopia, and so you go into this world thinking it's this shimmering, amazing utopia, and then slowly they chip away at that. And I just love that. Anytime form follows function, that's my thing. I really get that. And if it all just kind of aligns, and this movie does that beautifully, I think
it does. I mean, it is. You can use the word self-contained earlier. I mean, it really is. It's the classic script writing while also being entertaining and keep it moving. And does it because another movie could get super bogged down in the ideas and come to a screeching halt. Others could just be like completely yada yada the ideas and like I've just got to get the minimum out so that we can just start having action sequences. Right. And this does find that balance. It is a blockbuster with the brain, which has kind of always been a rare thing. So it's really refreshing that like this is Spielberg was still doing this a lot more often. He's still making movies, but I don't know how many. I guess Ready Player One was his last blockbuster, quote, unless you count West Side Story. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean West Side Story kind of bombed. I think Ready Player One did okay. I think it made somewhere in the realm of $200 million or something.
Yeah, I guess I just more mean a summer action movie, not necessarily one that did well gross-wise, but just like I'm making a movie. And Ready Player One, I don't think is nearly as smart as this one. So it's just like, oh man, yeah, peak Spielberg is a good way to put it. I don't want to skip too far ahead, but I kind of do actually. So I want to talk about the ending a little bit. You've thought about this movie way more than I have. How do you feel about the ending, both thematically and pacing-wise? I guess both layers. I want to know your thoughts on that.
Are we talking about like the very ending, like the very last scene, or just the climax where Tom Cruise comes back? He's bald and.
I don't mean the epilogue. Yeah, I mean where he confronts Max von Sydow at the event, and then they have a final confrontation, and then we do spoilers on this. So I mean, Max von Sydow shoots himself ultimately, faced with an impossible choice. He kills himself. That part. The epilogue is more like that's classic Spielberg. You just want to leave us feeling good and happy and whatever,
Well, let's come back to that epilogue and whether we feel that makes us happy. I don't know that it does. I know a lot of people have that opinion about this movie, but I tend to disagree with that. I do not feel happy about the end.
I don't either. Sorry, I just want to say like I think that's what Spielberg was trying to do. Like I want to try to leave the audience on a good vibe. It's saccharine, but anyway, let's Max von Sydow killing himself. Sorry.
I have no problem with it. I think you could take this scene apart and say that it's very like all of this stuff has to happen, and this is following screenwriter 101 template. I think that's true of a lot of things that are happening in this movie. You've got a cop who's divorced and he's got a dead kid, and you're kind of dealing with all these cliches throughout the entire movie. In fact, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Okay, so I mean, this is a movie where there's a cop who's I think has a dead wife and a dead son maybe in Time Cop, and he's dealing with time crimes. It's kind of the same thing. And yet that movie is not very good, and this one is, because the writers and the director have taken all those tropes and just made it the best possible version of them. So I guess this is a long-winded way of defending the ending, in that I think it's very well constructed. I think it's placing this Max von Sydow's getting honored. There's a voice in his ear. I think all that is kind of, you feel tense for him, for Max von Sydow. You're wondering how far Tom Cruise is going to go, because he did just get out of this horrible prison. Incidentally, the scene leading up to that is super fun, where his ex-wife sets the eyeballs on the organ, and you get that kind of horror moment. Yeah. So I think it plays out fine. I have no issues with it. I suspect you do, though.
Well, you're right. No, you're right. I mean, it was clearly a trap question. You're right. Not a trap. I was just curious because again, you're gonna have more insights and thought about this more than I have. I watched the first time a few days ago. I felt like it was a cop out. So the thing that most interests me about the ideas of the determinism versus free will, and it because it's a humanist movie and we want to feel good about the nature of choice and humans choosing. I wanted something a little more ambiguous, a little more, I don't know, stuff that would frustrate general audiences, basically, stuff that most people don't want. I wanted something more, I don't know, nuanced than he just kills himself. I mean, we hear John Anderson say, these are your two choices, and then he takes a third choice. And I wanted more of a confrontation about the ethics that happened. That was what I was looking for. I got the Tom Cruise, he's frozen in time, right? He's trying to save people's futures, but he's stuck in the past because he's stuck reliving this moment with his dead son and taking whatever that, drug is. I didn't like that Max von Sydow felt more like careerist as opposed to I think this is objectively the right utilitarian thing to do. Like, yeah, I killed a woman, but I needed to do that to save all these other people. I mean, you do the math, trolley problem. One person dead versus hundreds or thousands or whatever the math is on that. And more about that was what I was wanting. I wanted more of a sit down instead of a rushed thing through a kitchen. I felt bad for the kitchen workers, by the way. Like, these two guys are just screaming as they're trying to like get stuff ready. Like, what are these guys yelling about? You don't say his name. What's happening? I don't know. That was more. And then
Cruise is really good in that scene, though. Like,
yeah,
this might be one of Cruise's best performances. He's like really in the scene.
He's a charisma machine for sure.
The scene where he thinks he caught the guy that killed his son, like that's some really that's really dark stuff too, with the guy with all the little kids that he maybe had killed. But like Cruise is really good. He really sells that scene.
And so does Samantha Morton too. I mean, she's losing her mind over. She's like on her hands and knees on the bed, kind of losing it as he's punching that guy. But yeah, to your point, Ben, I see what you mean, and I think, you know, had Philip K. Dick written this story, it would have had a downer ending and probably explored that stuff. But I think this gets into maybe one thing that we haven't talked a lot about yet, which is the Hitchcock element of it. So Alfred Hitchcock was notorious for building suspense and kind of thrilling you, and then as soon as you hit the climax, the movie's over. This happens in several of his movies. You know, North by Northwest. 1 second they're on, you know, hanging off of Lincoln's nose, and the next second you get 20 seconds of them in a train car, and then it's over. Saboteur ends with a guy falling off the Statue of Liberty, and then it ends. You know, roll credits. And this whole movie is yes, it's Philip K. Dick, but it's also a Hitchcock wrong man thriller. And I think Spielberg is trying to pay homage to that throughout in a number of sequences. I mean, we talked about the car sequence. That was a leftover idea from North by Northwest. Hitchcock wanted to have Cary Grant walking through a Detroit auto factory and having a car build kind of in the foreground they're walking in the background. And so they took that idea and they're like, okay, this is a good idea. Let's have them just get into a car factory and have the car built around them. So they kind of took that idea and built upon it. So they're taking all these very Hitchcockian ideas and implementing them, you know, with Philip K. Dick. And so I think it sounds like I'm making excuses, and maybe I am, but or making excuses for the ending. But I think they're, you know, they're rushing through the ending because at that point it's all falling action. Tom Cruise has been caught. He's been released. We know who the killer is. Let's get it resolved and get people home.
Yep. Okay.
And you know, I think that's okay. I don't.
Well, that's the kind of movie Spielberg would make. I mean, that he made the movie, not me. That's fair. I mean, I just those ideas were what really weighed on me a lot more. Even then,
you want like 20 more minutes of them talking about pre-crime.
Not 20, about 10. Give me 10. Give me 5 to 10 minutes of a really intense sequence. They're both pointing guns at each other. Just Tom Cruise can point the gun. I mean, that's what I would like. And then we don't know exactly how it resolved. We don't know how we feel about determinism versus free will. But instead, we go for the kind of Back to the Future way of choice working, which you're kind of just deciding in the moment, and we don't know ahead of time.
So you want him to have gotten away with it then, like, and have it end that way, or you just didn't like how quickly it ended? I guess.
There's the pacing of it. It is really fast. Just feel like boom, we just got to get this done now. There's these loose ends that we have to resolve. We kind of were ominous, and is Tom Cruise going to be stuck in hell forever, or purgatory, if you want to view it as purgatory? No, he's coming back, and he's going to make it all right. The system's coming down. I want it ambiguous. I mean, there's an interesting choice to be made about, hey, this does genuinely save lives. That's why the idea is interesting. If it didn't work, then we wouldn't have a movie. At what point does this person who's already dead, what does exposing this guy's crime do? It's going to cause more people to die. That's just objectively what's going to happen. The ethics of that is interesting to me, the back and forth, and I'm not saying how to resolve it. So
I think you're maybe ignoring the essential, MacGuffin of this movie, to use another Hitchcock term, which is the Minority Report. Which is the whole point is that yes, there's free will and determinism, and those are two polar opposites. philosophically, I guess. And then there's, just the potential for something else. And we're seeing the potential for something else happen, which means that there's no such thing as free will. There's no such thing as determinism. And there's, it's all just chaos, which is what I think this movie is saying. There's a potential path that you could lead down, and maybe most people lead that path. But then maybe you don't lead down that path, and who knows? Yeah,
ultimately, they did lock up a lot of innocent people, right? That's the idea.
And they kept an eye on those people, whatever. Okay, fine. But, they're saying that a lot of people could commit these crimes. A lot of people might not commit these crimes. And, for the people who were going to commit them, great. But a lot of people had Minority Reports. And we don't know what people are going to do because people have a choice, and we're seeing potential futures. And I think that's kind of, to get into what we were saying before about the epilogue, is that, we're ending with no certainty of what the universe is like. We don't know if free will is the right answer. We don't know if determinism is the right answer. He's leaving us in chaos, and we don't know what to think. And great, the precogs got away, and they're going to be
books in that cottage for the rest of their life until they get old and die. Sure.
And the rest of the world's going to go back to a horribly violent place with no official certainty about the way things are, and people are going to go back to getting murdered, and the life returns to normal. To me, that's not a happy ending. That's a depressing ending.
Well, right. I mean, that's an interesting way of looking at it. It is kind of depressing. Because maybe one of the idea explored more, because, and even the concept of a Minority Report is, I guess that's the whole point of the movie. But it's more interesting if the determinism is true in the context that these people didn't have a choice, and they were going to. And by getting rid of this program, anyway, I don't know. I guess I also can't escape that I think there's a middle ground where you can arrest people, not put them in the mind prison, and put them for arrested murder or attempted murder.
Or flag them.
Right. Or just keep an eye on them like they said they did at the end. And I just kind of think, look, there's something here, and I'd like at least the ethics explored a little bit, because whether we care about determinism or free will, this is clearly driving the murder rate down to nothing, and that's also
but the people that are responsible for giving that information were kept like lab slaves. I mean, like those precogs were.
That's part of the ethics I want to explore.
You cannot keep somebody like that. That's inhumane, and that would have to be shut down.
Maybe one way to kind of explain this is as at least the choice on the writer's part or Spielberg's part is not only in terms of like just let's pay homage to Hitchcock by wrapping it up quickly, but there's also kind of an extra-textual element where the year before AI came out, and you mentioned before about Spielberg wanting to wrap things up quickly. I don't think that's always true, because if you've seen AI, he's got this 20-minute ending where he really just draws things out and really explores things.
Oh yeah, AI is kind of an exception. I mean, I love AI, by the way, but yes, I don't think most movies are like AI. I don't think most people wouldn't see AI and like it as they would like most of his other movies. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Apologies.
No, it's fine. And I think he got a lot of negative feedback on that from a lot of people. I think people thought it should have ended, at a certain point and not leaped, 1,000 years in the future, however long it was. So do I. Yeah, I absolutely. It everything about it works for me. I love that movie. But he got negative feedback, and maybe, I don't know if it's true, but maybe let's avoid that and avoid digging into that, and give a nice, efficient thriller that's not meandering in the way that AI does, and give audiences who better to go to than the master of suspense, and blend that with sci-fi and give audiences what they want.
And this is very much a me problem. This isn't really a serious problem with the movie. It's just more of I'm a weirdo that wants those ideas left ambiguous or explored more thoroughly, because that was the biggest hook for me. Is like, okay, I love this. The guy thinks the system's perfect. Well, now the system is bearing down on him. Does he still think it's perfect? Well, now he has a moral conundrum, because what he should do is just say, yep, I'm going to kill that guy. You better arrest me. But he clearly, once it comes to bear on him, he's like, oh, no, this is nonsense. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
It's super interesting. And then we get down to the second. I mean, it just made me, and I kept thinking of Back to the Future, like George McFly, because one of the things that interests me in Back to the Future, right, he punches Biff. That's the first big movement where George McFly makes a choice, punches Biff, and it looks like the picture's okay. But then there's another moment a little bit later, right, when he's at the dance and he's dancing with Caroline Rhea, and then some dweeb pushes him out, and the picture starts to go away, and he's still got to decide. Like, it's this down to the microsecond thing is what choice is viewed in Back to the Future, and I kept thinking of that with Minority Report, which is, I think, a more gratifying way from a human experience standpoint, even if it means more chaos, then we're set to live our lives a certain way, and we don't actually have free will. Sorry, bro. But anyway, sorry, that's very much a me thing, but it was interesting, and I just wanted to get your thoughts. So,
yeah, I'm trying to imagine what that movie looks like, and I think while I like all of the ideas that you're laying out, it's like I don't know that would fit in this movie. I think
it wouldn't. You're right.
It would slow things down, and it would be now suddenly, we've been on a chase for 2 hours, and now the last 20, I guess it would add on 15 minutes. So the last half hour is this conversation, this philosophical conversation that, it would lose all of its momentum, I think. And I think
you're right.
I think this is a chase movie first and foremost. I mean, I think the tagline at the time was "Everybody runs."
But does everybody run? That's one thing we didn't know that.
He says it like 4 times in the movie.
I'm like, wait, we saw one guy get arrested and he didn't run at all. He didn't have a chance to run.
Tom Cruise runs. I mean, inevitably, right?
Right, he does.
He's always
he runs a lot.
Run.
And she says to run. I mean, Agatha says to run. And I love the mall sequence, by the way, man. I said I don't think American life's going the way of the mall in 2 decades, but I love where she's like, stand here, grab the umbrella. I mean, that's just super fun stuff.
Another Hitchcock reference there too. That's from Foreign Correspondent. There's a famous sequence where a assassin disappears into some umbrellas during a rainstorm. So that's kind of a nice little fun nod there too.
But yeah, she even screams "run" as he's about to get arrested. Like, it's a little too late, Agatha. They're already here. I don't know where he's going to run. He's been surrounded.
Where were you 5 minutes ago?
Right. Like you wanted to take the time to tell him how his son would have lived. And I got to say, also as a parent, the scene at the pool is more horrifying than it ever was. I mean, it happened. It was a plot point when I was in high school, and actually now, like, the idea of like, oh, I'm just holding my breath underwater for 30 seconds and my kid can disappear. That's terrifying.
Where did his kid go though? That was always confusing to me. It's just like disappeared. Yeah. They never really go back to that at all. Like, did he investigate it? We don't even know if his kid was killed. Like,
just completely disappeared, and that's what's so haunting. I think it would probably be. I don't have kids, but I would imagine it would be somewhat easier to process if the kid was just murdered, because not knowing has got to just eat away at him, and then. Obviously, it ruined his marriage, and now he's a drug addict.
I wondered why they didn't have, because I thought there would be some symmetry with the murder, because like that's why he wants to stop murders, I guess. That was why he's so motivated, because his kid was murdered. But you don't really know if his child was actually murdered.
Yeah, no, that's true. I've wondered about that too. Why? I think he's just so passionate to prevent bad things from happening because something so terrible is happening.
Saving other people from the trauma that he experienced. He just wants to reduce trauma.
I had a question. So, watching this movie, the first 10 minutes, the first thing I thought of is like, would this movie be a big deal now? Would it be a big hit? Because it made over $100 million when it came out. But like, this to me seems like, aside from the Spielberg and Cruise aspect, seems to be something that would like go straight to video now, or like just right on HBO Max. Like, it's just like an original sci-fi movie is like, wow, they used to make those kind of things. They used to be big deals, and it doesn't really happen much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, star power. I mean, Tom Cruise is maybe one of the last big names that can command box office these days. But back then, Tom Cruise was a marquee name. I mean, he still is. But this was like the aligning of stars. I remember back then. It was like. The biggest director ever and the biggest star ever are now going to be in this sci-fi movie, and it was an expensive movie, and it didn't make a ton over its budget. Like, it's because it's not a well-known IP, and it's a very kind of sophisticated sci-fi movie that's entertaining once you're sitting down. But I think it was a hard sell, and it was kind of like word of mouth had to spread. And it had a long tail to it. It was in theaters for a while before it reached whatever it made.
Yeah, I thought of like Blade Runner 2049, which I absolutely love that movie. But that wasn't, I mean, that hardly made any money. It didn't even make a blip really in terms of box office. And that was sort of playing on an original IP. I know, it was an older thing, but like, that's what made me think. It's like, man, I miss those kind of movies. I just kind of long for them.
Yeah, I don't think this would be made today.
Probably not.
Don't people make? I mean, so you've got your boy Christopher Nolan, Eric, who kind of does the smart blockbuster thing, that are fun to watch and full of ideas. Also knows, I think maybe he goes a little idea heavy. Tom Cruise had the Live, Die, Repeat or whatever. I'm just trying to think of
Edge of Darkness.
Yeah, it's
amazing movie. I like that movie a lot.
Yeah, it's not as smart as this one, but it's super entertaining. It's just super fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, there aren't many left. Chris Pratt has tried and failed. I didn't see Passengers, and I'm probably never going to.
You should.
I don't have a bandwidth.
Well, there was that Hugh Jackman movie where they went in other people's minds or something like that.
That's it.
But they're a dying breed. We get the big blockbusters and the teeny tiny movies. We seem to get one extreme or the other these days. We don't get the middle weight movies.
I mean, I take it back that this movie wouldn't get made today. It would just bomb. I think.
Yeah.
I think it would go the avenue of Reminiscence, that Hugh Jackman movie you mentioned, which is a terrible movie, by the way, and nobody should. One of the worst movies of last year. It was so bad. But high concept, original. Nobody knows Minority Report, the short story, or nobody really cares about. That's not a thing
right.
that my mom knows. I think that's like the ultimate
it's
test.
It's a very small, hardcore, like sci-fi nerds that know it, and that's it.
Right. I mean, even Ready Player One, I think was, that was a bestseller, and a lot of people knew that just because they were into video games or 80s pop culture or whatever.
Right.
And so yeah, I think this would be a real hard sell today, and it would probably take. I think Cruise was maybe an executive producer or producer on this, and I think he would be able to muster, Christopher McQuarrie or whatever to make something like this today. But I don't think it would be as big as it was then.
Maybe that's like Mission Impossible 22 is like some weird sci-fi movie. Maybe that would work.
Yeah.
Those were a little sci-fi-ish. The technology feels a little like, all right, we're just kind of having a little fun with made-up gadgets that seem implausible, but whatever. Let's roll with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all right. Are we reaching the point here where we want to give our letterbox reviews here?
Yeah, unless there's something else you wanted to
Brian,
add.
You know this movie better than either of us.
We've kind of hinted around this, or maybe not really hinted around it, but just one last thing that I wanted to mention was, you mentioned Samantha Morton yelling "run," and I just wanted to talk about sound a little in this movie. I think this is one of the most interesting sonic experiences in my movie-going, history. When she yells "run," there's something beneath that. I don't know what it is, but it just reverberates. And I think that's true of the jets kind of that they have, like these hover machines, like whatever that sound is, it's just so reverberating and really like you believe that thing. It's not like some other sound that you've heard in a million other sci-fi movies. Like those are original haunting sounds. And then we haven't mentioned John Williams' score at all, which I think is like one of his most nimble and just like thrilling scores.
I didn't even think about it being John Williams. I didn't pay any attention to that.
The other thing to your point with the sound, those spin guns, the sound that they made when they shot to was such a unique sound, and the bass of it all. Yeah.
The sound that resonated with me, it was just the pitter patter of the spider legs. That was the sound that most resonated, which is the way they clattered on the ground. I don't know why, I just felt very real and visceral.
I would highly recommend you just watch that scene again and listen to the score. Okay. There's just like a string component there that Williams is doing. It's such it's such an intense, like thrilling music throughout that I love the score so much.
Okay, I honestly.
So you got the greatest composer, you got maybe the greatest director, you got the greatest star. One of the greatest screenwriters. You got a lot of great components.
And some fantastic role players. I mean, I do love. There were so many side characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
That actually triggered the other scene, and we didn't really talk about Colin Farrell much because, I mean, I think he's amazing in this movie. I actually think he kind of steals the movie. But the scene where they're in the elevator right after he's confronting Cruise about the thing, and he's dressing him down, and he's like, "You're not going to do anything, otherwise we'd hear the kill alarm," and then it goes off, and he's just like, "Oh shit, like am I going to die?" Like
that change
really
in his
great.
face is so perfect. Like it's just it gives me goosebumps actually just watching it because it's
perfect.
Yeah, it is very good.
Why does he go to Max von Sydow to tell the plot? That was one thing I was like, why are you going to that guy? Aren't you a federal agent? If you think there's corruption inside the department, why are you telling that guy?
He's so trusted. He's the old. If there's a human component that's wrong, it's not going to be him. He's the old, he's the old trusted guy who started this whole thing.
Yeah, I guess I
thought Colin Farrell's character was smarter than that, but maybe not. Maybe he's got a blind spot. Maybe he reminded him of his dad or something. I don't know.
But I remember I had never seen Colin Farrell in anything before this movie.
This is very early.
I remember who is this guy? And he's just in there stealing scenes from Cruise. And there's a bunch of stuff where he's like taking Cruise's job. And I wondered, like, are they trying to say he's taking Cruise like out as an actor, like he's replacing Tom Cruise, which didn't happen. It didn't really work for Colin Farrell, but I just remember being blown away by him in this movie. Like, who is this guy running around here just stealing scenes?
Yeah. I think he was in like Tigerland. I don't know if you guys ever saw Tigerland.
No, I didn't.
This Joel Schumacher war movie. That was like his breakout movie. Very good movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd highly recommend it. A rare, very good Joel Schumacher.
Yeah, it's like that's a rare. Good and Joel Schumacher don't necessarily those aren't in the same sentence often. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, he's very good in this, and I wish he would have not wasted 5 years on stuff like Phone Booth and Daredevil and done more smaller roles to kind of cut his teeth on stuff like this.
Oh yeah, Daredevil. Another one I've not thought of in a long time.
Yeah.
Does he have the thing in the bullseye?
Yes, the bullseye scar. It's not even a tattoo; it's a scar.
Yeah, that's really stupid.
Wow, it's really stupid. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't thought about that movie a long time either. So.
I was really into that movie in high school. I did get over it, but I did think it was really.
Brian, next time you show up on the pod, we're doing Daredevil. No, I'm just.
All right, sounds good.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. I wouldn't put you through that. All right, well, should we shift over and give our Letterboxd ratings? Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Brian, as the guest, would you like to jump in and give your rating?
Sure. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's a 5 out of 5.
Quick and easy. Okay. Slightly less love for me, but only slight. I would say 4.5. And I guess my only serious criticism flaws, I really did think Max von Sydow was kind of wasted in the role. I think almost any crusty old guy could have done the performance. There wasn't as much going on there as I wanted. I wanted more about his motivations. He's kind of ominous in a few scenes. We kind of understand his motivations a little bit later. He seemed too careerist, which is maybe, and that's just a me problem, but I wanted more. I wanted more of a juicier, because he's the real villain. He's the uber villain, the one that gets revealed at the end. And it's not quite what I wanted, and I love Max von Sydow. But that, I mean, otherwise, and I said I have my qualms with the ending, but otherwise, I was super entertained. It was when I started, and I was, I don't want to pause. I'm just like I'm hooked. I'm in the movie. Just want to escape and be locked in the whole time. I know it's a smart blockbuster. These don't happen often. They probably never happened that often, and they happen even less often now. So it was excellent. Anyway, that's me.
I was going to be at 4 stars, but Brian, you have convinced me to bump it up to 4.5. The couple scenes, I actually didn't really care for the scene with the woman in the garden. I thought that was it was just a little too weird for this movie. I know we're diving into some weird stuff, but it was just like, now there's these giant deadly plants. I don't know.
And they nuzzle her at one point, weirdly, like she's getting kisses from the plants.
Yeah.
It's very goofy.
I would have rather them not, that she's like the mother of the precogs, because then I had more questions where it's like they've been doing this they had thousands of cases, right? Like, how long were these precogs doing? Were there's like a precog before them? Were these the only precogs that had ever existed?
They're the only precogs.
They tried to do a bunch of genetic experiments. Most of the kids died. These are the only ones that had any ability whatsoever.
It made me ask a lot of questions. And then I mentioned the eye surgery scene. I didn't care for that as well. But all the things that, the other thing we didn't talk about, we sort of did the special effects, but Tom Cruise's apartment I thought was super cool, where the car kind of docked on the window and he climbed in. I didn't remember that from seeing it before. That's such a cool effect that they just throw in there. They don't explain it. It's just that's how he gets into his apartment.
But it's also
wall. They can park outside your window at an upper level apartment. Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it's also very practical, a practical parking spot, I guess. And you can build skyscrapers as tall as you want then and not have to waste anybody's time because your car's right there. It's one of those things that I feel like came out of this like summit with engineers. Like, wouldn't it be cool if your car just docked and everything was all magnetic roads anyway, so you could just have your car right next to your building.
Self-driving vehicles too. That's
We're headed there for sure.
Yeah, so I really loved a lot of it. There's just a couple little things that just didn't make me want to give it a perfect movie. But
you don't like the
squeamish, viscous body, and not body horror even. Just
I do, but not in like a big budget sci-fi Tom Cruise Spielberg.
I love the weird little touches. I did not expect the weird. He's got to chase down an eyeball sequence, and then we're reveling in whoever built that model or whatever. It's just like oozing. And you can just see the nerve connect. I mean, it was very visceral and funny and weird. But
yeah, it's kind of like this grotesque balance of humor and body horror. Same with the shot that he puts under his chin. Like, what a weird idea. Like, it just makes your face melt for a couple hours and I mean, that's a generally weird idea. Like, I've never seen anything like that since. It would be a mask or something like that, and I think that's kind of like a play on Mission Impossible at that point, maybe.
I was like, they didn't want to do
a mask because he'd done it in Mission Impossible a couple of times already. Like, all right, it's an old bet, we got to do something.
But like the facial recognition, that's another like technology that's exploding now. Everywhere you go, there's somebody capturing your image, and it's going through some database and tracking it.
Yeah.
Okay, should we shift over to the 5 Degrees of Field of Dreams? So, I heard Brian's an expert at this. So, connecting Minority Report over to Field of Dreams. Would you like to go first, or we can jump in there? Are you all set?
Yeah, I'm all set. I thought of 2 that can be done with one actor. Or, I mean, really, there's just like one connection. And one is Max von Sydow to Ed Harris in Needful Things. And Ed Harris does the voice in Field of Dreams. And then the other is Tom Cruise and Ed Harris in The Firm.
All right. Mr. Ed Harris.
Yeah, Mr. Ed Harris. He was the link. Everybody's been in a movie with Ed Harris.
Cool.
And I'll go.
We do ours a kind of weird. You're trying to find the most efficient route possible, which is what my brain would usually do. But we do this thing where you have to find basically 3 movies to sandwich in between. So you start with Minority Report, and then got to get to Field of Dreams.
Oh, I was cutting so many out. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's an opportunity to just throw plugs or just find weird routes. It's actually more difficult because I didn't find that efficient of a route. Ellen Burstyn can get you there in a couple of moves. You can also get to James Earl Jones and Conan the Barbarian, but not as efficient as yours. But so in this one, I started with Minority Report. I also went back with Max von Sydow because people don't know, but he's an absolute legend of Swedish filmmaking, and he worked with this director Ingmar Bergman a bunch in Sweden in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And I don't know what his first, I guess his first big one maybe was Exorcist. He's one of the old priest in Exorcist. That would have made him more famous in the U.S. at that point. But in the 1976, it's a movie called Voyage of the Damned. All my movies are very heavy, by the way. It's a very depressing route. Voyage of the Damned is a star-studded movie. It's got Orson Welles in it. It's based on a true story about a bunch of Jewish people during World War II, Holocaust. They're going to get on a boat that's going to take them to Cuba, and they're going to get away from Germany. But it was really a setup by the Nazis because they wanted to prove that nobody wanted Jewish refugees. So the Nazis let them do it, and they get rejected in Cuba, and nobody wants them. It's a very, very depressing story, again, based on what actually happened. But James Mason's in that movie. James Mason's in another movie called A Star Is Born. I think at that point, the second iteration of A Star Is Born. There's been 4, I think. He's the alcoholic who finds a young Judy Garland, who at a jazz club, and she's the one who's rising, he's falling. And Judy Garland is another movie, Judgment at Nuremberg. A whole bunch of stars there, Spencer Tracy, but the big one is Burt Lancaster, who is in Field of Dreams. So So that's the route I took again, dealing with Nazis and two of them, and then somebody, killing themselves because they're too much of an alcoholic. Those are my
real light stuff you're talking about.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll make mine quick. I went with Tom Cruise, and he's in a movie called Tropic Thunder. He plays the agent and does the Flo Rida song in the end, which is amazing.
We don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yep. Robert Downey Jr.'s in that. He's playing the guy that looks like the other guy that's playing the other guy. He's in Zodiac, which is an amazing movie. Mark Ruffalo's in Zodiac. And he's in some rom-com. I had never seen this movie, Rumor Has It, which also has Kevin Costner in it. And that's how I got to Field of Dreams.
Rumor Has It is this, it's like a spiritual sequel to The Graduate where I think it's like Jennifer Aniston's mom and dad were like supposedly the characters from The Graduate. Like her mom and dad were based on those characters. It's not a good movie.
Like Dustin Hoffman's character from The Graduate grown up? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but The Graduate was the fiction, then her parents were the real deal. So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, not a good movie.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
So I feel bad that I did a short version. So I'm going to do a longer version, if that's okay.
Yeah,
go for it.
All right. I'm going to go the opposite and do very stupid movies. And do Max von Sydow with Sylvester Stallone in Judge Dredd.
Sure.
Which is, just
garbage. I am the law.
Right, exactly.
I am the law. Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone with Kurt Russell in Tango and Cash, which is another just garbage movie. It's really doesn't hold up at all. That's the whole period of Sylvester Stallone where he wore glasses to look like intelligent. And he did that. I don't know if you've ever seen this video of like Sylvester Stallone with glasses meeting Rocky Balboa in the museum. Have you ever seen this?
No.
You should search for it. It's one of the worst things ever created. It's so super funny. It's Sylvester Stallone ripping on himself. It's incredible. You need to look it up. Anyway, so Kurt Russell was in 3,000 Miles of Graceland, 3,000 Miles to Graceland with Kevin Costner.
Okay.
There you go.
Did you just do that off? I mean, you talked about. Did you just do that off the top of your head?
I was thinking. I felt bad now. Yeah, so I was thinking about it, and that's the first one that came to mind.
I just want people to know. I mean, this isn't. I mean, the podcast is edited in a general sense. I don't think we're going to edit this out. I mean, literally, he came through with the super efficient route right at the beginning, and then I don't know. Eric and I talked for let's generously call it 5 minutes, and then Brian had his chain ready to go in that amount of time.
Well,
it's probably less than 5 minutes.
We did one movie. I did the same route. I did the Stallone, Tango and Cash to the Graceland. It took me like 2 hours to make that connection. I was like just scanning IMDb, and you just did it in seconds. Very impressive.
Me and my wife, like whenever we're in the car, we play this game, and it's just a competition between the two of us. So my brain's just wired that way, I guess.
Cool. Well, anything else? We're going to talk about the next movie we're going to do. Ben's going to do a little trivia. So that normally we just kind of say what movie we're doing next week. Ben's got some trivia questions. So feel free to participate. Sometimes Ben makes them really hard. I don't know what the...
Well, we have another guest coming on next week. So they made it, I think, pretty hard. I mean, I got one that I think a bonus one if we need help. But I also think, Brian, you're more likely to get it than Eric based on just our interaction here.
You got 5 clues, right? Yeah. Basically. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, okay. So I'll start. I mean, I usually like to start with the year. So the year is 1985. Obviously, you probably can't guess yet. So this is directed by the same person that directed the original Bad News Bears, and I can give you the name of the director. I don't know if you know. Do you know already, Brian?
I think I do. Yeah. Should I say it?
You should. You're gonna blow my mind. Yeah.
Is it the Golden Child?
No, it's not the Golden Child.
Oh, okay.
Okay. You can have multiple.
Is that the Eddie Murphy movie? The Golden Child?
I want the knife. I want the knife.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great. And one of the Lannisters, I think, is the bad guy. So it co-stars a future Oscar winner. Pretty vague. It's number 4. Clue number 4. I'm just gonna keep going. I think that probably help you. Number 4 is it's based on the first book in the series. So there's a series of books that's based off of the first one.
You said 1985?
Correct.
Is it the Never-Ending Story?
Nope.
No.
I don't know if those are based off of books either. Maybe they are. I think they're just made up.
The director is Michael Ritchie.
Oh my god, I'm so impressed that you knew that. Yo, you're exactly right. That's exactly who the director is.
And that's why I thought it was Golden Child, because he directed.
I think Golden Child's a little bit later. I think Golden Child might be 86, 87, 88. I want to say 87, 88. But it's not this movie.
Future Oscar winner. And I'm sorry, what was the fourth clue?
Fourth clue is it's based on a series, and it's based off the first book in a series. So there's a series of books. The first one, this movie's based on. And to help there, I think other books that sequels to this movie are based on. So it's the first movie of several too. I mean, you can extrapolate there.
What's the fifth clue?
Okay. So the guy that plays Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, the original, he has a minor role in this movie as a cop. I don't know the actor's name.
Yeah, I know who I can picture him.
You said he plays a cop?
Yeah, minor role. I mean, he's not a major role. He's not like a major role. It's just a couple scenes.
I'm gonna be embarrassed when you tell me what this is. I can't think of it.
You should. These are hard clues. I was gonna be shocked if you got it.
You said you had one that might be a little easier for us to get. Another clue, a little side clue.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I think that's a good way. It stars. Do you know who the star of the film is?
Yeah.
It's Chevy Chase is the star of the film.
Oh, Fletch.
Yep.
I totally. Yeah. Okay.
There's a book, a Fletch book. It's a novel.
Yeah, it's a whole series.
Oh, really?
There's a new Fletch movie coming out with John Hamm.
Okay. Oh, he's playing the new Fletch? Okay.
Yeah. I think that's a good choice.
I have never seen Fletch, so this will be a first-time watch for me.
It's funny. I kind of like the sequel too, actually. It's not as good, but it's Michael Ritchie is a great director. If you just kind of go through his filmography, he's made some really great movies. Bad News Bears, even. Have you seen Bad News Bears?
Oh, I love the original Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love Golden Child. Yeah.
Yeah. He made this movie called Smile about beauty pageants. That's just cutting into the American system. It's
like a satire comedy kind of thing?
Okay. Yeah, it's like black satire.
Sure.
Or Prime Cut. Have you guys ever seen Prime Cut?
Oh. I've never heard of either of these two movies. So
Prime Cut is one of the most unflinching, nasty thrillers that you can get. It's Gene Hackman is
I love a Gene Hackman thriller.
A human trafficker, and Lee Marvin works for the mob, and he's trying to get Sissy Spacek, who's been trafficked, away from him. And
everything you're saying is definitely making me want to watch this movie.
It's got incredible action sequences. It pulls no punches whatsoever. I love the movie. It's amazing. You should watch it.
Okay, you've sold me on it. Those are a bunch of. I mean, Eric, do you know who Lee Marvin is by any stretch? Does that name mean anything to you?
I know Tarantino talks about him a lot in his movies.
Yeah.
I don't think he made too many movies. I mean, I think by the 70s, he was still doing stuff in the 70s and even in the 80s, but not a lot of stuff that would have reached your stratosphere.
Is he in a bunch of cowboy movies?
He's in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. It's a great movie.
Yep.
And he's in Dirty Dozen. The big red one is this war movie with Mark Hamill and
he's got white hair, right? And he got white hair.
I mean, eventually stuff you'd see him and he's already kind of
Dirty Dozen. He's got white hair, right?
Yeah, usually you see him, he looks old and chiseled and tough. He's one of the old tough guys.
The Big Heat is he's in his early career he played a lot of nasty criminals and film noir movies. The Big Heat, he throws a pot of coffee in a woman's face.
He's the guy that throws coffee. Oh man, I haven't. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. You should check out Lee Marvin. He's great.
I mean, I've got a list of movies that I love that I think Eric are gonna hate.
Yeah.
I might add some that I love that he might like. I might add some of these to I might make Eric watch them because Eric doesn't tend to go too far back. He likes Hitchcock. A little further back than that, but for the most part,
sure,
it's black and white. Eric's not into it.
It's all right.
I like a good noir.
We'll do Double Indemnity sometime. I think you might like that one.
I've seen that.
Okay, well then never mind.
The Big Heat is one of the most it doesn't pull any punches. It's
coffee scene is surreal. It's shocking to see a movie that old be that violent. You're like, oh
Yeah.
wow, I didn't expect this from the 40s movie.
So I guess to wrap up
50s.
our Lee Marvin appreciation discussion,
For sure.
watch Big Heat and watch
Primal Cut.
Cut.
Prime cut. Like steak. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Well, unless you have anything else you'd like to add about Minority Report, we can cut it here. Just want to thank you so much again, Brian, for joining the podcast.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I have nothing to add about Minority Report. I will. In fact, I reread my essay in advance of this, and I want to go back and write more about it now. So I may expand what I've already written on it now.
You're gonna write a treatise on Minority Report. I love it.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll find that on your website, deepfocusreview.com.
Yeah, deepfocusreview.com. Then, at Deep Focus Review is my Twitter, and then Patreon/Deep Focus Review. If you want to join and check that out.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining. Next week we are watching. And take it easy. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thanks, guys.